Welcome back to the Marketing Gateway. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and today we're going to bring you part 2 of our interview with Brandon Towl. So in our first part, we talked a little bit about Brandon's experience, how he's a master of questions. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the things that he is thinking about in terms of marketing strategy, what he's thinking about for 2026, and of course, all of the wonderful things he does with our AMA St. Louis local chapter. So again, I think you're going to enjoy this interview. It was so much fun. Here we go. Well, let me ask you as well, rigid thinking is another problem that we have in marketing. And one of the things that many marketers struggle with is this kind of idea of like, we're in this particular category, or we offer this kind of service, or we need to look like this other brand, right? And that's exactly what we're talking about there. So that can be really limiting though. So how can marketers break free of that sort of thinking? I mean, beyond just asking, how can we do the opposite? Is there anything else they can do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I almost feel like we could do a whole nother podcast on that, right? And it's kind of hard without having an actual example in front of you. So I'm going to try to see if I can speak to some generalities. But I find that sometimes the need to categorize things sometimes gets in the way a little bit. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to marketing and salespeople who defines their target market, for example, by industry and size, like industry size or industry size and persona within the company, right? And those sorts of things just carry so little information these days, right? And I can give you examples of that if you want. But so, maybe thinking beyond like, okay, what would I want to know about my best clients that do not fall into tidy categories like industry and size, right? What's a more efficient way of grouping them, right? By pain points or something like that. So I think just resisting the temptation to label and tag everything, at least for a second, hold off on that and say, like, what's really driving the business here, right? I think the other thing is having a mindset of piloting and experimenting, right? There's so much in creative that's tied up with like, okay, we've got to make it right. Legal's got to be happy with it. CEO's got to be happy with it. But the most successful brands are willing to experiment and try something outlandish and say, we have this much budget and time. We're going to try it and see what happens. And they'll fail at 5 things before they discover the magical 6th thing. Or sometimes they'll fail at 9 things before they find the magical 10th thing, right? So learn really well how to pilot an idea, whether it's a marketing campaign or a product or a service, and learn how to like roll it out to maybe your 5 best customers or 5 new customers in a new market, right? Learn fast and reiterate, right? It's not a move fast and break things. I want to reiterate that. I think that term needs to die. But it's a, set aside something to just try around and play with stuff. Because, again, sometimes our assumptions going in can be either stale or unfounded, right? And so being willing to interact with the real world, so to speak, is often the best antidote for unearthing those assumptions and maybe getting rid of them, right?
So I know, in my own research, like I have a large client who they're in a very competitive market, and they thought one of their competitors was the other big company in that market. And it turned out there's a smaller one that's up and coming that is actually the one that's stealing their market share. And they're the one that they actually need to worry about. We were able to identify that through research. And right as I pointed that out to them, an announcement was made like a couple days later that competitor was, hey, they're opening a new facility right in your territory. So it was good. They were able to start thinking that way already because they were already thinking about how to respond to it before it happened. But this happens a lot because we tend to look at, we fixate on this kind of point of view of, oh, this is our competitor, or, oh, this is our market, or, oh, this is our customer. And sometimes we have to get a different point of view, and sometimes that can involve hiring new people that have different perspectives, and that's always helpful. But sometimes it can just involve looking at the data and seeing things a little bit differently. Can you think of any situations where you've ever been able to help any of your clients do that?
Yeah. And before I get to that too, there's a couple of interesting stories that come up, and it has to do with reconsidering, 1, who your competition is, and 2, who your allies are, your referral partners. So the one on your competition is I don't know if you're a coffee drinker or not, but you'll sometimes see a cute cafe called Coffee Cartel, right? Every once in a while, something like that, right? It seems to be a name. Um, the coffee industry actually tried a cartel model, back in the day, and there's some products that lend themselves well to. So cartel is basically a bunch of big players in industry get together and say, look, we're going to work together to set prices. And it worked well for oil, obviously. It worked well for diamonds. And it failed for coffee. A bunch of coffee growers got together. They tried to, stabilize prices, and it just didn't work. Why is that? Because coffee was one of those products where, yeah, there are a bunch of competitors that you could choose from, but there were a lot of non-coffee alternatives too. So if the cartel got together and raised prices on coffee or cut supply, it wasn't like people would be like, all right, we'll pay for the coffee. What happened is they started drinking tea or cola or getting chicory, right? Or I guess these days, mushroom coffee, right? And so what they saw is people bleed off of coffee onto other things. So if you asked, okay, who's the competitor for like a Folgers, right? You might say it's Maxwell House or it's Starbucks or whoever grinds, Caldi or something like that, right? That'd be true because there are other coffee grinders and processors and roasters, right? But really, the competition isn't just coffee as a small category. It's also tea and other caffeinated beverages and energy drinks, right? Because that's what consumers lean to when they can't get coffee at the price that they want, right? So sometimes you have to think much bigger about your competitive set, right? Than just, who are the people doing the exact same thing that I do right now. Um, the other story about thinking more widely has to do with referral partners. I always tell people, like, hey, get some good referral partners and they can sort of turn on the taps for you. But you've got to think not in terms of like who's in an adjacent industry. You got to think about who's talking to the same customers. So this happened with, I was telling this to a guy who was a financial advisor, right? And I was like, who do you have for referral partners? He's like, well, I'm in like in a BNI, and so I have an estate planning attorney and a mortgage guy, and that's very typical for a financial planner, right? That those are the people. And I said, interesting. Well, you need to go down to the luxury car dealerships on Big Ben there, the Mini and the Jaguar and stuff, and go and make friends with as many of the salespeople there as you can. He's like, why would I talk to car dealers and car salesmen? I said, well, tell me, who's your best target demographic? And he said, well, it's usually a guy, middle age, 40 to 50, has a really good job, paying high six figures, but hasn't really saved for retirement, or their parents going into assisted living. They need to start really planning for the future, right? I'm like, okay, great. Now with that target market, before they talk to you, what have they gone and done? It's like, oh, midlife crisis. They went and bought an expensive car. I'm like, bingo. So what you do is you go to those people who are talking to this target market before they come to someone like you. They bought the car, and as they're bringing up the paperwork, they say, oh, hey, while we're financing this, do you have a financial planner? You should talk to our friend, so and so. And so he hadn't even thought that that was something, but literally talking to the same sorts of people that he wanted to meet, right? My wife is a print broker, and so she buys and sells printing. And we did an exercise, and she discovered that a lot of her best clients are ones that do events on a regular basis, right? Because if you run an event, very often you need to send out invitations and letters, you need to print booklets, you need to print banners, right? There's a lot of printing needs around that. And so that made her realize, I don't need to necessarily talk to businesses or nonprofits directly. I need to talk to the event planners and the event venues, right? And as people are coming and engaging them, they can say, oh, do you have a good printing resource for those programs? Go to Kathy, right? So I think thinking a little wider about who your referral partners are and who your competition is really is helpful for figuring out where your business needs to go, right? And sometimes that takes a little creativity. Sometimes it takes a little harder look at who your client list is and asking some questions. And sometimes it's just talking to the clients directly, right? So
And it's so true. And I love the phrase referral partners because so often, especially when you're in a business to business kind of business like I am, we are sitting around waiting for the phone to ring. And we know it's a lot of our business comes in for referrals. We know that a lot of our business comes in through repeat business, but
Hmm.
we're kind of at the mercy of, when do people need what we're selling? And
Right.
having a partnership where you have something that is a little bit more passive, where it's not just you're waiting for them to have a need, but for them to see a need and to explain it to someone else just makes that a lot easier and a lot more fruitful. And
Hmm.
I think just taking the time to be creative and think about that is a wonderful strategy. So I'm so glad you brought
Yeah.
it up.
I mean, like for me, for example, I often say that another instance where my service is really good is when there's misspent marketing. So I always try to talk to people who are fractional CFOs because they're the often ones going into a business and saying, "Huh, your finances are a mess, and you are way overspending on your marketing and getting nothing from it. You need to fix that, right?" They're not going to fix it. They've just identified that you've been bleeding money, right? But then that becomes a good referral partner for me because then they can say, "Oh, you misspent marketing. Talk to Brandon, have him do his thing, right?"
Brandon's
And
our
like,
Michael Clayton. He's a fixer. He can solve this problem for us.
yeah, yeah, something like that. But likewise too, I can reciprocate because sometimes I might go to a customer and find out that, oh, it seems like you're doing X, Y, and Z right, but you really need a fractional CFO to make sure that you can fund your growth. If you do all these recommendations, and here's who I'd recommend, right? So I'm always on the lookout for those kinds of partnerships, right? Because abundance mindset, we can all help each other grow here. So.
Well, and if you come in with the guy who's controlling the purse strings on board with you, then it makes it a lot easier to make recommendations because then it's not just, well, they'll never go for that. They'll never pay for that.
Yeah,
Well, no,
yeah,
actually,
exactly.
that's why I'm here.
Right, right, right,
Well,
exactly.
speaking of marketing, so you and I are both part of the American Marketing Association chapter here in St. Louis, and I know we both have a real passion for helping to connect marketers in our area. You have done a really fantastic job in the AMA with the monthly coffee meetups. So speaking of coffee earlier, that's something
Yeah.
where we get together the first Thursday of the month and we have coffee. And tell me a little bit about how those got started and how your role in them has kind of evolved, and then some of the things you've been doing to make those events more than just a meet and greet.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting because I kind of stayed away from the AMA for a while. I'll openly admit that. I'd spoken a couple of times. I'd been to a few lunches, but it wasn't anything I saw the need to get involved with. And we can go, have a beer sometime and go over the reasons for that. I got involved though because I knew one of the current co-presidents, Marissa Lowther, and she asked like, "Hey, we're getting together and getting some volunteers for you. Would you come and check it out?" And I just kind of heard the vision that her and Hannah were laying out, and I'm like, okay, I know that she's a good leader. I know that she's really capable. It sounds like they have a good vision. I think this is the time to catch the rocket ship while it's on the way up, right? So I think they're doing a tremendous job with it. And if people are truly marketing curious, I think it's something to check out. And I love that, one of the things that they said at the beginning of their tenure was like, look, not everybody could come out to luncheon in the middle of the day. We've got to experiment with having different times of day, different price points, different activities, because not everybody's going to come to everyone, but everybody will find something that they find value in. And so Coffee Club really came out of that, and it came out of those two saying, like, let's do this. Let's have a morning networking thing before the workday starts. And I told them, plug me in wherever. So they said, what? You run this. And so I was off to the races doing that. And so it's really great because first Thursday of every month, as you know, we get together at a local coffee place. And I'll give a shout out to those places because they've been truly fantastic to work with. We did Living Room in Maplewood. We did Telva in Webster Groves. We did Caldi on Skinker near WashU. This coming January, we're doing E61 Cafe. they've all been great to work with. And so if you like coffee and you want to support local, any one of those. And before that, we also did Antagonist Cafe in Soulard
Yep.
and Northwest Coffee in the Central West End. I didn't organize those, but still two great venues. So if you want to support local coffee, I'll just give them all a shout out right now. But to get to back to your question, one of the other things that I realized is that because I also got put on the membership committee, and one of the first things I suggested we do, it's like, well, okay, if we're going to try to promote membership in the AMA, let's do some research. Like we're marketers, we do marketing research. Let's actually have some conversations with people who rightly should be members of AMA, but aren't so far, right? And those were really good conversations that I and others had. And when we put together the information, a few things stuck out. But one of the things that stuck out was that some of these people we conversed with had been a part of other professional associations, but some of them kind of devolved into just being social hour. Like people would get together for happy hour, they have drinks or something, but it really wasn't something that was going to move their career forward, right? And especially if you're going to, have your boss say, pay for your membership, you've got to convince them that, hey, I'm actually learning something. There's value that we get from membership besides it just being a social club, right? So I was very cautious and intentional that I wanted the coffee club to not just be, a bunch of marketers get together over coffee and shoot the breeze, right? I wanted it to be something where people would make connections and maybe learn something. But how do you do that with a very loosely formed networking thing? So I just started introducing some activities into the flow of what we did. So, for example, at one coffee networking, I brought in a big poster board. I don't know if you remember this, but I brought in a big poster board. And I gave everybody stacks of sticky notes. And I said, hey, I want you to write down on these sticky notes one thing you tried this year. You can use as many sticky notes for as many things as you tried. And then you got to put on the poster board on the left, if it's something you tried and it really worked out, you got an ROI. Put it on the right if it's something that was disappointing, that didn't give you what you wanted.
And I put email marketing on that one, by the way, the one that was disappointing because it wasn't working.
Yeah. Well, here's what's really cool about the activity is that it's a crowdsourced thing. You put that on, and then you get to see what everybody else put on. And I'm surprised how many people put either email marketing or AI tools for email or inbox cleaners, right? It just seems that like right now in St. Louis in marketing at the end of 2025, email's not doing it for folks, right? So remember that whole you need to zig when others zag, right? Everybody tried the email route and it's just overly saturated, right? What's working out more are live events and trade shows, right? And the things that people are trying very much trended toward new AI tools, right? And so that was great. It was a great activity because over the course of coffee, people are just putting sticky notes on this thing. And by the end of it, you had a whole board that gave you kind of a snapshot of what people tried this year and gave people inspiration for what to try for next year. And I'm like, okay, so you get that whole thing, right? I mean, imagine if I did a survey of this and I'd have 20 questions like, did you try this? What happened? Did you try that? What happened? What else are you trying? It'd be boring and nobody would fill it out, right? But they're there at a coffee shop, they're chatting, they write it down on a sticky, put it on, and you get the same result, right? But all for the cost of coffee and all in a morning's, networking. And so that turned out to be a really kind of cool activity, I think. People could walk away and, is it scientifically valid? No, but I bet you they got a few ideas of something that they wanted to explore in January, right? The other one that we just did was kind of fun. I really wanted to not only have people learn, but feel more connection with their fellow marketers and feel support. So I brought a box. Matter of fact, I might have it here. Oh, I don't. I don't have it here. I thought I had it here. I had a little box labeled Marketing Confessions. And I had everybody write down on a note card what their marketing confession was. So what does that mean? So an example would be someone had confided in me a few weeks earlier. Yeah, I had to give a presentation on AEO to my team, but I'd only just heard the term myself. I had no idea what I was talking about. I BS my way through it, right? That's confession. And we all have them, like, that client that checks on a big project on Monday and you're like, oh yeah, it's going swimmingly, it'll be fine, but you don't start it till Wednesday. Right? Or I've been on the job market for way longer than I thought I would be, that sort of thing. So everybody wrote a confession down and honestly put it in the box, shuffled it up, and I read them out loud. And what was amazing is everybody got to hear what everybody else was anxious about or what they did. And I think there was a little bit of like, oh yeah, it's not just me. Like other people are in the same boat, right? Like there was a lot of worry and anxiety about the job market, right? There's a lot of, oh my gosh, I can't believe the leadership I have to work with. But I was allowed to actually say that out loud, right? And then as the final to that, what I did is like, okay, you heard the confessions. Now we're going to write some affirmations. What one thing can you tell the people that you just heard to help them get through 2026? That we stuck on the board, and that became a very positive thing, right? Because now, hey, here's what the entire marketing community in St. Louis is telling you, to stick with it, take your time to reflect. Yeah, the job market's bad, but it will happen. Stay with it, right? And so I think that was really good because that was an example of people in the profession really having a chance to support each other and give them a message of like, hey, we understand where you're at. We've all been there. Stay with it, right?
I love it. I think encouraging each other is just as important as acknowledging that, yeah, we're all facing a lot of the same issues. And
yeah,
I missed that particular gathering. I wish I had been there, but man, I'm so glad that you guys did that. That's just fantastic.
yeah. Well, and so that's sort of one of my goals is that every time we do coffee club, we have a different activity like that. We'll see how far my creative juices go and see when I begin to repeat. But
you may have to have a board one year where they put things up. What can we do at the next coffee club?
yeah, there we go. Make it crowdsource that as well, right? But I think that's something that I think the temptation sometimes is you go to a networking event, and yeah, that's sort of a script you do. You got to be able to say what you do in a couple of sentences, why it's relevant, who you're looking for. You ask the same questions. Like there is, but after a while, it can become a little formulaic. It can become a little bit like I'm not really paying attention, right? The other person's not. So my thought process is always how can we deepen the conversation, right? How can we make it so that people really feel like. And it's funny the number of times I liken marketing to dating. But there was a study that two researchers did, and it was looking at intimacy, and it was looking at taking strangers and having them go through a list of questions. The idea is you start with very superficial stuff, and then each question gets a little bit deeper and more personal, right? And it just kind of followed like, what did that do to the relationship versus people who got like random questions, right? And they were interested in how knowing about the other person correlated with actually like falling in love, right? And it was true that the deeper it went, the more vulnerable you were, the more you felt a bond with the person, and maybe even fell in love with them. And I'm not looking to make marketers fall in love with each other, but I do think we tend to think of these professional associations in totally mercenary terms, like, I'm going to go, who can I meet? What kind of ROI will I get out of it? Does it justify my taking a few hours out of my day? And I'm like, I get why we have to think that way. Like I said, if the boss is paying your membership, you got it. But people aren't going to show up again and again unless they feel like there's something deeper there. So I'm always asking, how can we tap into that deeper thing, whatever it is, that je ne sais quoi? And I think if we do that, and I'll say too, and forgive me for rambling, but I was thinking about this the other day. There's a stat I read that said that right now 70% of CFOs don't trust their CMOs. Now think about that, 70%, right?
Wow.
I tell people that stat and I get two reactions. One is, oh my gosh, that's really high, 70% don't believe. The other reaction is like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I get both reactions from the same person right next to each other, right? 70% is a thunderous. I mean, there's a whole section of leadership that doesn't believe that CMOs are going to deliver and that the CMOs are being honest with them. that to me is unforgivable. And I think we've given ourselves kind of that black eye, right? We're the ones who said for years and years, like, oh, go digital, you can track everything, blah, blah, blah. And when we tracked everything and saw that there wasn't an ROI, said, no, you can't do that. It's all branding, right? So we did things like that to ourselves. Or we would say, like, hey, here are the eight ways you could write an email subject line to trick somebody into opening it. And people are like, are we really into the business of tricking people into opening an email to make number go up? Is that what we do? That shouldn't be what we do, right? So I get it. Marketers are kind of seen like the used car salesman in business, right? A little bit. Matter of fact, nothing against the used car salesman, but everybody knows the stereotype I'm gesturing at, right? So with that kind of statistic, what are we going to do going into 2026? I think what we need to do is we need to rethink what marketing is doing. We need to really rethink how we approach it, and we need to go in with integrity and with community. I want the end of the 2020s to be a period of time where my kids and grandkids can look back and say, oh, that was the start of the next golden age of marketing, right? That was, there's the Mad Men period, and then there was the 2020s where they brought humanness and humaneness and integrity back to marketing. It's a big challenge, but I think that's what we have ahead of us. And if we can do that, I think that's going to make people, the professional, a lot happier. I think that's going to make companies who hire marketers a lot happier. And I think it's going to allow us to leave a little bit of a legacy. So,
well said, well said. And what a great point to end on. And one of the things that I always do at the end of our interview is give our guests a chance to plug something. Anything you want to plug. Here's your chance. What would you like to plug?
Ooh, well, I already plugged all the great local coffee places around here, so I'll do it again. Remind people that check out Living Room Maplewood, Telva and Webster Groves, Caldeon Skinker, Antagonist Cafe in Soulard, E61 over off Union, and Northwest Coffee House. Check them out. I know you all have laptops and like to drink coffee and get the work done, so check out one of those places definitely. So I'll just repeat that. Supporting local is just good generally, but that's a way to do it. In terms of other things that I would like to plug, I'll just plug my own company real briefly, Human Driven Understanding. You said master of questions, right? That's kind of why I feel I've become. So if you have a company that you feel you've gotten kind of stuck, that you're kind of shoveling a lot of dollars into your marketing budget and haven't seen the outcomes that you want, let's just talk. It might just be a few ideas we generate for you. Maybe you need this process where I talk to your best clients for you. And I would especially like now, it's the beginning of the year, right? Now's the time to get clear on this stuff so that you can plan appropriately for the rest of the year and hopefully make 2026, the year that you pivot and become even more successful. So
I think we can all use a great 2026. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Indeed,
thank you so much
right.
for being on the Marketing Gateway, Brandon. It's been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed talking with you. And thanks so much for being a marketing mentor to our community as well. And we'll look forward to seeing you at some of those AMA events and hopefully having some coffee with you.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to come into that event, you can look me up or look up the AMA. I'll probably be at most of them. So you can come, anyone who's listening to this can come talk to me anytime. And I just want to say, Sean, I also had a huge amount of fun doing this. I'm so glad that you're doing this. And I hope it reaches a lot of people and gives them some food for thought. So keep on keeping on.
Thanks so much. Well, that was so much fun. And I'm so appreciative to Brandon for taking time to be on and be a part of our marketing mentor community here on the Marketing Gateway. And we've got many, many more awesome guests like Brandon coming up this year that you're going to get a chance to hear. I'm so excited to share them with you in the weeks to come. Thanks for being a part of this experience. I'm Sean in St. Louis. This has been the Marketing Gateway. See you next time.